Hello again. Welcome back to You Talk, where surprisingly we talk. Yesterday we spoke about ending poverty positively. Look, we spoke about ending poverty permanently and the government's role in that, and we sort of got dragged into what poverty actually means because it's not so obvious. We spoke briefly about Simone Lingue, uh, developing the concept of wage slavery, and uppity anarchist Emma Goldman popularizing it in the Anglosphere. And we didn't really get to the meat of the subject matter, which is
Yeah, we didn't actually answer
how
the
do we
question.
end poverty permanently?
Mm.
So I've actually been doing a quick bit of reading between recording sessions because the answers for ending poverty have existed since the late 1700s,
Mm.
mostly because the problem of class stratification started shortly before that.
Well, I'd
And
argue it
the
started
issue
in
has
Rome,
always been
but
political will. Yeah,
yeah,
like
I'd
this
argue
is this
it's
is an issue of political will. So we want to talk about, like we said earlier, the Economic Policy Institute determined that policy is what drove a wedge between productivity and compensation for workers, and that policy can also reverse that effect. So let's look at the policy side of things and figure out if ending poverty permanently is feasible. Hint, I'll skip ahead here. It is.
yeah,
And
like
how
so
we
I,
can
I
do
don't know
it.
if this is really a spoiler to say that yeah, we can end poverty. It's quite literally been done before in a quite a number of examples actually.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a number of situations.
We can
And
do
on that
it.
I'd
So the
say that
question is,
I'd
how
say that
badly are policies going to hurt people like a certain young lady named Gina Reinhardt, who inherited a mining business, exploited it to the hilt, and makes more money than I am even going to see in a lifetime?
yeah,
How
so
are they going to hurt
on that
governments who have benefited
on
from corruption? And what is the little guy actually going to experience from these policies? Because it's always the little guy who's being talked about as disenfranchised when you have your media machines explaining why it can't be done. Oh, God
so
blimey, I've gone native. Now I'm talking about media machines. You've ruined me, Kyle.
ruined you. No, I have lifted you out of mental poverty. I look okay. So little backstory to that. I
Orange cat
absolutely
hours.
despise it. Look, I despise it when people talk about politics in terms of left and right, and so I'm trying to get people to talk about political media in terms of media machines, which is exactly how it works. Hence why I'm making a whole ass documentary on that. And I'm trying to get people to talk about politics in terms of well, the reality of politics. That
And of
that it's
course,
the
policy.
process. Yes, that it's I mean politics is the process by which the distribution of wealth, power, wealth, and resources is decided. Now we may technically distribute power through voting, but even the ability to get on the ballots is has kind of been commercialized. It costs $2,000 at the federal level. Last I checked, it costs 250 at the state level. Now 250 is doable, I think. 2,000 is less so. But then like even if you move past that, which is a huge thing, like just getting enough money to stand a chance in an election is a commercial endeavor in itself in which you're selling an idea. Again, the commercialization of society. But moving past that, say we got past that, how can the government end poverty? Well, there's a couple of different ways, or rather, a couple of different policy initiatives we can take. First, we need to end the direct causes of poverty. In Australia, that is this housing crisis.
Yeah,
And
we're seeing a cost of living generally, affordable housing and secure work are explicitly called out Like, one of the things we want to approach in the future is why it seems that Australians are disengaged from the political process. Going to skip ahead a little bit into however many weeks in the future this is. They're not, it just looks like it. Or more accurately, there is enough hope from people who are genuinely engaged that it's not all gone to hell.
You know what? I'd actually, to a degree,
voters have
disagree with you
specifically
there.
called out. That's
To-
okay.
to-
I have data here and we can visit that in the future. But the point I was going to make is that people have called out as areas of policy repeatedly, especially in the last election cycles, that they don't want one accident at work to mean that they're going to be in poverty for the rest of their lives. They don't want to struggle to keep food on the table for their families. They don't want to have housing insecurity.
You know what? I think I can summarize. I think I can summarize this in one sentence. We want the Australian dream that was promised to us as kids. We want to know that we're going to buy a quarter of an acre block, that we're going to build a house on it, and that it's going to be a decent house. We're going to have a decent living situation, and we're going to have a decent amount of finances to actually raise kids with.
Invest in cherry winemaking.
Yes. I don't think we've talked about that on the air.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at some of the OECD. I'm just having a look at some of the OECD documents quickly, and the key thing here is that we need governments to act in a way that engenders the trust of the populace, and we need governments to bring to bear the expertise and the giant system, the giant machine of a country to directly respond to the concerns of people. Part of that's about rebuilding trust in government. Part of that's about
I really got to cut in here. I really got to cut in here, because that actually brings us back to, like, the machine of government. That brings us back to the one through line with everything we keep talking about, and that we keep end up going back to, is corruption. I mean, look at, like, okay, again, politics, the process by which the distribution of power, wealth, and resources is decided. Wealth and resources keeps going effectively to the top 1%. We keep seeing that, whether it's bullshit pork barrel contracts which deliver billions of dollars into the hands of donors, whether it's, tax concessions for, the most powerful in society, because they're the people who donate to the political financing to the election campaigns. It just keeps coming back to corruption. So we have such an inefficient machine of government that so many believe can't do shit. Like, as in can't work properly.
Hang on, Kyle. I just realized something. I think we need to communicate this as well. Because you said pork barreling, and I immediately thought of, you can have it all in New South Wales. Good old John Pork Barrelaro.
Yep.
And good old Dom Perrottet.
A nickname he gave to himself.
You have to understand, right? You look at John Barrelaro. If you've been following Jordan Shank's work, you will know that he made a number of dodgy deals, to say the least. John Barrelaro is never going to be in the top 1% of people in Australian society by wealth.
I don't know. He owns an estate, a big one too, which has it.
No, he's still not going to be in the top
with a house, and then it has a second house on the estate.
He's still not going to be in the top 1%. He might make it into the top 15%. He's never going to be in the top 1%. He has scraped through the bottom of the barrel in terms of ethics to try and secure a place higher up the greasy pole than other people. He has pulled a lot of tricks out of his hat to try and secure a better future for himself. He is still never going to be on the level of these true masters of society who just sit on their hoards of gold. The corruption isn't even worth it. And that's what I'm getting at here.
See, he basically screwed everyone to get as much wealth as possible, and he doesn't even compare to these people. He doesn't even compare to the real commercial forces that dictate the direction of society.
If a government had the nerve, had the chutzpah and the cojones to go after these sort of parasitic hoarders of wealth,
They'd be
half this
eliminated as a
corruption
government.
just wouldn't be necessary because people would have a real shot
Well, see, the thing
without
is,
the
I mean,
corruption.
the thing is, in the current circumstance, we've actually seen that once. Kevin Rudd's government was that. It was a government that was prepared to make those sensible choices that went against the commercial interests of Australia's elite. It went against the commercial interests of the big mining companies and their owners, the big banks and their owners, and even the media machines and their owners.
And the
We've
Labour
now seen
government was at the time so fractious that those interests were able to exploit the ambitions of others within the party and just go, yeah, okay, we don't like this government. New one, please.
Yeah. And it wasn't even the fractures in the party that made that happen. It's more that it was more the like 2010 they dropped, I think it was about 42 million into an election campaign. It was a hung parliament where the then Labour government, then under Gillard, just held on to power because the crossbench was more sympathetic to them than they were to Abbott. And then after that in 2013, they dropped 100 million to finish the job, and they had a super majority in the lower house. Think about
but back
that.
to this.
A
How do
super
we end
majority
poverty?
is incredibly difficult to get under any circumstances. And they can just afford to drop $100 million, and it doesn't put a dent in their wealth, and they can replace the government that much. And then for a decade, Labour was out of government because they tried to stand up to a few special interests. And the reason for that, the reason why that can happen is because those special interests effectively, they control
you.
Well, yeah.
They control the narrative, they control the information that the average person gets. They run scare campaigns that the average person can't refute.
Yeah.
But back to this. Okay, so let's look at not say completely toppling the apple cart yet. Without getting itself promptly removed from government, how can a government relieve these pressures on the cost of living and abolish poverty?
Well, see, what we need actually is a government that doesn't depend on the traditional channels of power, or else that can't happen. So we can't. I don't think there's really an answer to that question that you just asked, because if it depends on the media machines to get its message out there, it can't go even slightly against the
cool.
the
let's say we have a humanist media machine. Let's say we can make that work. Let's assume that the lies aren't going to be as bad as they typically would be. What
well, I'd say let's assume that we have a political party that has direct contact with the Australian people outside of the sphere of these massive corporate media machines. Let's say that they have a majority in government, or at least can negotiate through a crossbench to get some decent policy in. Then there are policies that can be implemented. We might need to do a part 3.
You mentioned 32-hour work week. No, we can do this real quick, honestly.
Well, we've only got 3 minutes, and I think there's a lot more that we need to talk about. So how about we do a part 3 to this?
Okay, but I will start
policy that I want to talk to. Yeah.
Small bites, remember, Carl? You keep telling me we can't do this massive long thing, and we keep getting derailed. Ultimately, yeah, corruption's a huge problem, but the average person who's starving right now doesn't give a damn. Limited work week. Make sure there's time for recreation. Guarantees of a minimum wage that is pinned to consumer price index so that it represents creep in the prices of things that are required for everyday living. Like, we've looked at universal basic incomes as an idea, and that has pros and cons.
There's kind of a way that we
social
talked about
security, a robust social security network, so that having an incident at work which leaves you unable to work for months doesn't suddenly mean that your family's facing like a Charles Dickens novel. Who wants to live in a Charles Dickens novel? Because the dickheads who run Centrelink want you to live in a Charles Dickens novel.
I have to admit, you kind of lost me there, but maybe it's because I haven't read enough Charles Dickens. I'll add that to the list. But in the next episode, we'll finally finish this and we'll talk about how, what government policies specifically will end poverty permanently.
Okay, and I'll hold you to that.
Yes.
See you soon, all.
See you then, everyone.